Dawn Bruce was a vibrant 22-year-old woman with dreams bigger than most. Living in Richmond, Virginia City, where history mingled with the pulse of youthful energy, she was carving out a life full of promise. Enrolled at Virginia Commonwealth University, she was not just a student, but also a passionate musician who played in the university's symphony orchestra. But Dawn was more than a college student. She was a hard worker who juggled 2 jobs, a telephone operator by day and a waitress by night. Despite the exhaustion, she loved the freedom her independence gave her. Her mother, Joanne, described her as a happy soul who wanted to experience everything life had to offer. Dawn aspired to become a firefighter, a goal that was rare and challenging for women, but that didn't stop her. She took firefighter courses and volunteered at the local fire station. The fire in her heart to break norms and live life on her own terms burned bright. But all of this came to a horrifying end on the cold morning of December 19, 1990. Joanne hadn't heard from her daughter in days and went to check on her, but she found shattered her world. Dawn lying in a pool of her own blood in her apartment, brutally stabbed in the heart and sexually assaulted. The medical examiner revealed that the killer had held her down as she bled out, slowly 8 to 10. Agonizing minutes of suffering. Detectives on the scene were stunned by the cruelty. Tom Tiller, the lead forensic investigator, later called it one of the most horrific crimes he had seen. Despite a broken window, there were no signs of forced entry or struggle, and no foreign fingerprints other than one faint, bloody print on a pillowcase. The crime scene was eerily minimal in physical clues, making the investigation challenging from the start. The investigation seemed stalled. Dawn's killer left a chillingly small trail, just a broken window and a partial bloody fingerprint on a patterned pillowcase that refused to reveal its secrets. Police interviewed neighbors and acquaintances, uncovering potential suspects. One neighbor, a parolee for armed burglary and violence, initially drew suspicion, but his blood type didn't match evidence at the scene. Robert Knight, another neighbor, with a history of drug offenses and a reputation for harassing Dawn, emerged as a prime suspect. Semen found at the scene matched his blood type, but his alibi being with his girlfriend appeared solid. Still, the pillowcase fingerprint remained the key piece of evidence that could not be decoded by traditional methods. Months passed with no progress until a latent print conference introduced a breakthrough technology, image enhancement. This new computerized process could digitally strip away the complex pattern of the fabric, revealing a clear fingerprint beneath the bloodstains. For the first time, Dawn's killer's thumbprint emerged in stark detail on a screen, igniting hope for justice. However, the technology was untested in court. Defense lawyers called it unreliable hocus pocus, questioning whether the image was altered or fabricated. The court had to decide whether this cutting-edge forensic method would be accepted as evidence, a decision that could change the course of forensic science forever. The courtroom was tense as the murder trial of Robert Knight began. The prosecution stood firm on the revolutionary fingerprint evidence, which had been painstakingly enhanced and verified by top experts. The defense tried to dismantle the credibility of the technology, arguing it was experimental and could not be trusted. Experts testified about how the image enhancement software worked not by altering the fingerprint itself, but by digitally removing the confusing fabric pattern that had obscured it. They explained how a computer's ability to distinguish 256 shades of gray far surpassed the human eye's 16 to 32 shades, enabling clearer identification of ridge details invisible before. Despite the defense's objections, the judge ruled that the evidence was admissible, setting a precedent for future cases. This landmark decision underscored the balance between embracing new scientific tools and ensuring justice through rigorous scrutiny. Meanwhile, investigators continued their search for the murder weapon. 6 months after the crime, a repairman working in Knight's old apartment found a hunting knife concealed behind an access panel. Forensic tests matched the knife perfectly to the impressions left on Dawn's pillowcase, cementing the physical evidence against Knight. Faced with overwhelming proof, the bloody fingerprint matched to his thumb, the hunting knife linked to the fatal wound, and DNA evidence. Robert Knight pleaded guilty to the murder of Dawn Bruce. He was sentenced to 4 life terms, avoiding the death penalty but ensuring he would never walk free again. Despite the justice served, the lead investigator, Tom Tiller, expressed his bitter disappointment. He believed the heinous nature of the crime deserved the ultimate punishment. His words lingered. "I do not believe he deserves to breathe, eat, sleep, laugh, or feel any emotion." Dawn Bruce's story was one of a young woman with hope and fire, brutally extinguished by a violent killer. Yet through persistence, innovation, and determination, justice found a way. The murder of Dawn Bruce had sent shockwaves through the quiet Richmond neighborhood. Despite the arrest and guilty plea of Robert Knight, questions lingered in the minds of investigators, friends, and family. How could such a brutal crime happen without anyone noticing? What dark secrets did Knight hide behind his facade? And was justice truly served? As the city grappled with the aftermath, detectives Tom Tiller and Jim Dorton began digging deeper into Knight's background. His past was riddled with drug addiction, previous arrests, and suspicious behavior. But there was more beneath the surface. Neighbors recalled hearing arguments, unexplained visitors, and odd hours. Some whispered of a darker side to Knight, a man capable of more than anyone wanted to believe. At the same time, the forensic team worked tirelessly to piece together every shred of evidence. Though the pillowcase print and hunting knife had been pivotal, there were still unanswered questions about the timeline and motive. Why had Knight chosen Dawn? Was the attack purely opportunistic, or had he harbored resentment and obsession? Investigators revisited the crime scene multiple times, looking for overlooked clues. They collected fibers, re-examined Dawn's daily routines, and interviewed friends and co-workers. Each conversation painted a clearer picture of Dawn's life, her hopes, struggles, and the circle of people around her. The more they learned, the more tragic her death seemed. A young woman with so much potential, caught in the crossfire of a violent man's demons. Meanwhile, legal experts prepared for what would become a landmark case in forensic science. The use of image enhancement technology in court had opened new doors, but also raised concerns about privacy, accuracy, and the ethical limits of digital evidence. Debates sparked among scientists, lawyers, and civil rights advocates about how far technology should go in criminal investigations. Back in Richmond, the community mourned. Candlelight vigils and memorials honored Dawn's memory, reminding everyone that behind the headlines and forensic breakthroughs was a real person, a daughter, a friend, a dreamer. Her story became a catalyst for change, inspiring local groups to advocate for women's safety and support for victims of violence. Through months of painstaking work, the pieces slowly came together. Each new detail, each new testimony, added layers to the complex tapestry of truth. And while justice had been served in the courtroom, the real victory was in the unyielding pursuit of answers. a testament to the resilience of those who refuse to let Dawn's life and death be forgotten. After Robert Knight's arrest, the investigation seemed to have reached a pivotal moment. But for detectives Tom Tiller and Jim Dorton, the case was far from closed. They knew that beneath the surface of this brutal crime lay a web of secrets that could reveal more than just the identity of a killer. It was about understanding the dark motivations, the missed signs, and the subtle clues that could prevent another tragedy. Robert Knight's background was scrutinized extensively. His history with drugs, petty crimes, and volatile behavior painted a portrait of a troubled man, but nothing immediately connected him to such a violent act, at least not on paper. Yet neighbors and acquaintances whispered about incidents that the police had not fully explored. Strange late-night visitors, unexplained absences, and cryptic phone calls hinted at a more sinister story. Detectives revisited every witness and re-examined timelines. They spoke again to co-workers at Tommy's restaurant, hoping to uncover overlooked details. One waitress mentioned that Knight often lingered near Dawn's table, watching her with an intensity that made her uncomfortable. Another employee recalled overhearing arguments between Knight and unknown individuals on the phone, suggesting debts or threats. Forensic experts delved deeper into the physical evidence. Though the enhanced fingerprint and knife matched Knight, there were fibers and traces at the scene that didn't fit the narrative. Could there have been an accomplice? Was Knight part of a larger circle involved in darker dealings? These questions pushed investigators to broaden their scope. Meanwhile, the community's reaction grew more complex. While some sought closure with Knight's confession and sentencing, others demanded justice for potential victims hidden in the shadows. Advocacy groups highlighted the need for better protection for vulnerable individuals and more awareness about domestic violence and stalking issues, often dismissed until it was too late. As the trial date approached, the pressure mounted on the prosecution to present an airtight case. Defense attorneys challenged the new fingerprint technology, questioning its reliability and the legitimacy of digital enhancement in court. The courtroom became a battleground for scientific debate, legal precedent, and moral questions about the use of technology in justice. Behind the scenes, Dawn's family struggled with grief and anger. Joanne, her mother, pushed tirelessly for the truth and for reform in victim support services. She met with lawmakers, joined public forums, and worked closely with detectives to ensure Dawn's story would serve as a catalyst for change. Through sleepless nights and endless interviews, the team unraveled the hidden threads that connected the victim, the killer, and the community. Every discovery deepened the tragedy, but also brought hope that lessons learned could prevent future horrors. The courtroom buzzed with anticipation as the trial of Robert Knight entered its critical phase. What had once seemed like a straightforward case, a man caught with the weapon and fingerprint evidence, now hung precariously on the acceptance of new forensic technology. The stakes were higher than ever, not just for justice for Dawn Bruce, but for the future of criminal investigations everywhere. The defense team, led by sharp and relentless attorney Michael Hayes, attacked the credibility of the image enhancement technology. They called upon forensic experts who labeled the digital process as experimental and unproven, arguing that the enhancement could distort or manipulate the fingerprint, making it unreliable. Their aim was clear: to create reasonable doubt and dismantle the prosecution's strongest piece of evidence. On the other side, the prosecution brought in Dr. Elaine Carter, a computer imaging specialist who had pioneered the very technology used to reveal the fingerprint on the pillowcase. With calm precision, she explained how the process did not alter the fingerprint, but instead removed interfering fabric patterns to highlight the ridges and minutiae unique to each individual. Her testimony was meticulous, bolstered by vivid visual aids projected for all in the courtroom to see. As Dr. Carter demonstrated the computer-enhanced fingerprint alongside traditional, unreadable photos, murmurs rippled through the courtroom. Jurors leaned forward, visibly engaged in the scientific revelations unfolding before them. This was not just a murder trial. It was a turning point in forensic science history. But the defense was relentless. They scrutinized every pixel of the image enhancement process, questioning the software's algorithms, potential biases, and the lack of widespread acceptance in the forensic community. Hayes pressed Dr. Carter on whether human error could have influenced the results and whether other explanations might exist for the print. Matching Robert Knight's thumb outside the courtroom, media coverage exploded. News outlets debated the ethical and legal ramifications of admitting such evidence. Advocates for technological advancement praised the breakthrough, while skeptics warned of science fiction overshadowing solid, traditional investigative methods. Back in the courtroom, tension rose as both sides presented conflicting expert witnesses. The judge's rulings on the admissibility of evidence set legal precedents that would influence cases far beyond this one. Amid the legal drama, Robert Knight's demeanor shifted noticeably. From initial defiance, he grew increasingly withdrawn and anxious as the forensic battle escalated. His alibi weakened under scrutiny, and his defense team struggled to maintain a consistent narrative. Meanwhile, investigators worked tirelessly behind the scenes, following leads that could corroborate the forensic evidence or uncover new details. Interviews with neighbors, friends, and colleagues revealed inconsistencies in Knight's statements and behaviors. His relationships, once opaque, now came under a harsh spotlight. For Dawn's family, the trial was a roller coaster of emotions. Hope for justice mingled with frustration over delays and complexities. Joanne Bruce, steadfast in her resolve, attended every hearing, determined to see the truth prevail. As the chapter of courtroom battles and scientific debates unfolded, one thing became clear. The fight for justice was as much about embracing innovation as it was about confronting the darkness of human cruelty. As the trial progressed into its 7th chapter, the spotlight shifted sharply onto Robert Knight's alibi and the mounting pressure surrounding his defense. What once seemed a firm claim that he was with his girlfriend during the night of Dawn Bruce's murder was now beginning to unravel under the weight of evidence and testimony. The prosecution called Dawn's boyfriend and several neighbors to testify. Their stories painted a different picture of Knight's movements that night. Some neighbors reported seeing him near the victim's apartment around the estimated time of the crime. The boyfriend's testimony, filled with emotion and confusion, contradicted Knight's assertions and raised questions about his credibility. Meanwhile, investigators discovered inconsistencies in Knight's timeline. Phone records placed him away from his claimed location, and witnesses recalled encounters with him that did not align with his statements. Under growing pressure, Knight's girlfriend was called to the stand. When questioned, her initial support faltered as she admitted to being uncertain about Knight's whereabouts during key hours. The defense, sensing the crumbling foundation beneath them, shifted strategies. They painted Knight as a man struggling with addiction, desperate and lost, but not a cold-blooded killer. They emphasized the lack of direct eyewitnesses and the possibility of alternative explanations for the forensic evidence. but the physical evidence continued to loom large. The hunting knife found behind the access panel in Knight's old apartment matched the stab wounds on Dawn Bruce perfectly. The computer-enhanced fingerprint on the pillowcase was the silent witness nobody could ignore. In a dramatic turn, under intense cross-examination, Knight finally broke his silence. His confession was chilling, yet lacked remorse. He admitted to the attack but claimed it was not premeditated. The court listened as he detailed his dark obsession with Dawn, the frustrations that boiled over into violence that fateful night. The confession added a grim layer of closure for the prosecution but reopened wounds for the victim's family and community. The trial was no longer just about guilt or innocence, it was a stark confrontation with the depths of human darkness. Outside the courtroom, public reaction was intense. The city of Richmond grappled with the horror of the crime and the emerging role of forensic technology in bringing justice. For Dawn Bruce's family, the chapter closed with painful clarity, but questions about safety and the justice system's reach remained. The courtroom was heavy with anticipation as the jury filed back in after hours of deliberation. The atmosphere was tense, every eye fixed on the judge as he prepared to read the verdict in the murder trial of Robert Douglas Knight. The evidence had been overwhelming. The computer-enhanced fingerprint on the pillowcase, the hunting knife discovered in Knight's old apartment, and the forensic matches of seminal fluid left at the crime scene. Knight's own confession had stripped away any last doubts. But despite this, the trial had been a landmark case, not only for the brutal crime itself, but for the groundbreaking use of image enhancement technology in forensic science. When the verdict was finally delivered guilty on all counts, there was a collective sigh of relief in the courtroom. Dawn Bruce's family, though devastated by their loss, felt that some measure of justice had been restored. The 4 life sentences handed down to Knight ensured he would spend the rest of his days behind bars, unable to harm another innocent soul. Outside the courthouse, the community expressed mixed emotions. While many applauded the diligent work of law enforcement and the court's decision, others debated the absence of the death penalty, a fate some believed Knight deserved for the cruelty he had shown. Investigator Thomas Tiller's voice echoed this sentiment, his words a somber reminder of the dark reality behind the justice system's limits. The case had also opened new doors in forensic investigations. The acceptance of computer-enhanced fingerprint analysis as valid evidence marked a turning point in forensic science, promising more breakthroughs in solving cold cases and bringing criminals to justice. Yet, the shadows of this tragedy lingered. Dawn Bruce's story was a stark reminder of the vulnerability many face, the dangers that lurk unnoticed, and the importance of vigilance and justice. Her memory lives on, not only in the hearts of those who loved her, but also as a symbol of progress in crime solving.